Welcome, Stoic wisdom. Imagine waking up in a world where the very ground beneath you seems to shift, where the air you breathe is thick with uncertainty, and every shadow whispers of threats unseen. You're adrift in a sea of clamor, the modern world's incessant demands pulling you in 1,000 directions, a ceaseless current of notifications, expectations, and anxieties. You probably won't survive this mental onslaught intact if you don't find a way to navigate it. You might feel overwhelmed, constantly reacting, a puppet to external forces. Your peace of mind, a distant, hazy dream. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. You open your eyes, not to the familiar comfort of your own bed, but to the dusty streets of ancient Athens, a city teeming with life, noise, and philosophical debate. The sun is already high, baking the stones, and the scent of olives, sweat, and something vaguely like stale bread hangs heavy in the air. You're not here for a holiday, though. You're here because you've reached a breaking point, a realization that the chaos outside your mind is only a reflection of the chaos within. And as you trudge through the agora, past the merchants hawking their wares and the sophists spouting their theories, you stumble upon a figure, a former merchant himself, named Zeno of Citium. He stands by the painted colonnade, the Stoa Poikal, delivering a lecture that sounds oddly calming. You listen closely, a faint smile playing on your lips as you hear him explain a concept that feels both revolutionary and utterly obvious. The circle of control. It's simple, really, yet profoundly transformative. You can't control the weather, can you? Or what that person over there thinks of you, or the price of figs at the market. All that external noise, all those things that keep you up at night, are firmly outside your circle. What is inside, then? Your own thoughts, your judgments, your reactions, your choices. That's it. Just those, everything else. Just background noise. It's like trying to herd cats while simultaneously juggling flaming torches and reciting epic poetry. A delightful mental image, certainly, but utterly impractical. Why exhaust yourself trying to influence the uninfluenceable? This isn't about apathy, mind you. This is about efficiency. Epictetus, a former slave who later became a revered Stoic teacher, would later hammer this home with a bluntness that only a man who had truly known hardship could muster. He'd remind his students, and now he reminds you, that your primary task in life is simply this: to identify what is yours and what is not. If it's not yours to control, let it go. If it is, then exert your will with all your might. You might even find yourself chuckling at the sheer simplicity of it, wondering why it took you so long to grasp such a fundamental truth. Historians still argue whether Zeno himself explicitly drew a diagram of this circle, but the core principle was undeniably present from the very beginning of Stoicism. You observe the passers-by. Some hurry, brows furrowed, clearly in a rush to control something that seems to be slipping away. Others lounge, indifferent, perhaps having already absorbed Zeno's quiet wisdom. You feel a strange sense of liberation, a lightness in your step that wasn't there before. The burden of trying to manage the entire universe suddenly lifts. Remember that feeling of being caught in an endless loop of worry about things you couldn't change. That tight knot in your stomach, well, consider that knot significantly loosened. You're starting to understand that true freedom doesn't come from having everything go your way, but from accepting that some things simply won't. And that's perfectly fine. What if you could spend all that wasted mental energy on something productive instead? Something you can affect. The idea is, frankly, exhilarating. You take a deep breath, the warm Athenian air filling your lungs. For the first time in what feels like forever, you're not fighting the current. You're learning to flow with it, steering your own small vessel with a newfound clarity, focusing only on the rudder that's truly in your hands. As the warm Athenian sun beats down, you find yourself not just pondering the circle of control, but actively testing its boundaries. The gentle hum of the city fades as you embark on a new kind of training, one that ancient Stoics like Seneca embraced with a peculiar enthusiasm. Voluntary discomfort. It sounds like something out of a self-help book published by a masochist, doesn't it? But trust me, there's a profound wisdom to it. You're not seeking pain for pain's sake, like a philosopher who accidentally sat on a thistle and decided it was a learning experience. No, you're deliberately exposing yourself to minor inconveniences, to the edges of what feels comfortable, not to suffer, but to build resilience. Imagine, for a moment, deciding to skip that warm bath tonight and instead opting for a bracing splash of cold water. Or maybe you decide to eat the plainest, most unappealing meal you can conjure, day after day, for a week. Or perhaps you simply walk to your destination instead of taking the chariot, even when you're tired. These aren't grand, heroic gestures. They are small, almost imperceptible acts of defiance against your own inclinations, little nudges to remind your pampered self that you can, in fact, endure. It's like going to the gym, but for your soul. You're lifting emotional weights, one uncomfortable moment at a time. The goal isn't to become a monk or a Spartan, though some Stoics certainly lean that way. It's to inoculate yourself against the shocks of misfortune. Seneca, a wealthy Roman senator and philosopher, famously practiced this. He would intentionally wear coarse clothes, eat simple food, and sleep on a hard bed for days at a time. Why? To prove to himself that he didn't need luxury to be content, and to steel himself against the day when luxury might be stripped away from him entirely. It's a rather ingenious form of psychological premeditation, isn't it? If you can willingly choose discomfort, then when discomfort is thrust upon you by circumstance, it loses its sting. You've already made friends with it. It's like discovering that the monster under your bed is just a particularly fluffy dust bunny. Historians still argue whether Seneca's personal practice of poverty was always consistent with his immense wealth, a playful jab at the hypocrisy some perceive. But the principle itself, the deliberate embrace of hardship, remains central to Stoic training. Think about it. What if your greatest fears aren't about suffering, but about your reaction to suffering? If you constantly chase pleasure and avoid any hint of pain, then when genuine hardship strikes, and it will, because life is a bit of a trickster like that, you'll be utterly unprepared. You'll be a hothouse flower suddenly exposed to winter frost, but by practicing voluntary discomfort, you're building calluses on your soul. You're teaching yourself that you are stronger, more adaptable, and less fragile than you might believe. It's a subtle shift, but a powerful one. You're taking back control, not by controlling external events, but by mastering your internal landscape. One quirky tidbit about this practice. Some ancient philosophers, not exclusively Stoics, would intentionally fast for days, not just for spiritual insight, but to experience the raw, primal sensations of hunger and to prove mastery over their bodily desires. Imagine feeling the gnawing emptiness, yet choosing to sit with it, observing it, rather than rushing to satisfy it. You might recall how we talked about Epictetus and the circle of control in the last section. Well, this is the practical application of that idea. You can control your reaction to hunger, to cold, to fatigue. You can choose to endure, to learn, to grow, rather than to complain or succumb. It's a continuous experiment, a constant testing of your limits, not to break them, but to understand them. You're proving to yourself that the external world holds less power over your inner peace than you once thought. Having embraced the chill of voluntary discomfort, you now find yourself standing at the precipice of another profound Stoic realization: impermanence. The Athenian dust that clung to your sandals yesterday feels a little lighter today, perhaps because you're starting to understand that even the dust itself is in a constant state of flux. Everything around you, every fleeting moment, every cherished possession, every loved one, is a temporary arrangement, a cosmic loan that will eventually be recalled. It's not a morbid thought, not if you look at it through the lens of memento mori and amor fati. Instead, it's an incredibly liberating one. Imagine, if you will, holding a perfectly formed sandcastle on a pristine beach. You've painstakingly crafted every turret, every rampart. It's a masterpiece. And then slowly, inexorably, the tide begins to creep in. Your natural instinct might be to frantically build higher walls, to desperately try to preserve it. But a Stoic, having contemplated impermanence, would look at that tide, not with despair, but with a quiet acceptance, perhaps even a gentle smile. The beauty of the sandcastle isn't in its permanence, but in its fleeting existence, in the joy of its creation before it returns to the ocean. You might even find yourself wondering, what if the true beauty is in the letting go? This isn't about being detached or uncaring, quite the opposite. It's about appreciating the present moment with a fierce intensity precisely because you know it won't last. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor who often penned his Stoic reflections in the quiet moments between imperial duties, frequently reminded himself of death, not to be morbid, but to prioritize what truly mattered. He understood that every breath could be his last, every encounter a final farewell. This awareness didn't make him sad, it made him profoundly grateful and focused. It's a bit like having a library card with an expiry date. You make sure you read those books. Think about your own life, about the things you cling to, your youthful appearance perhaps, your current job, even that comfortable armchair you adore. The Stoic perspective gently, almost sleepily, whispers, "This too shall pass." It's a mainstream historical fact that ancient cultures, from Egyptians with their elaborate burial rituals to Roman Stoics, incorporated contemplation of death into their philosophical and daily lives. It wasn't about gloom. It was about living fully. This awareness reduces attachment, not because you don't love something, but because you understand its nature. If you know a beautiful flower will wilt, you appreciate its bloom even more, right? You don't get angry at the petals for falling. And then there's amor fati, the love of fate. It's not just accepting what happens, but actively embracing it, loving it, because it is part of the unfolding tapestry of existence. If something is going to happen anyway, why resist it? Why fight against the current when you can learn to surf? It's a radical idea, perhaps, but one that leads to profound inner peace. You're not just accepting that your sandcastle will be washed away. You're admiring the way the waves dissolve it, becoming one with the very process of its dissolution. There's a certain strange elegance to it, isn't there? One rather quirky tidbit related to this is the concept of a death mask in some ancient cultures, not just for funerary rites, but as a reminder of mortality. It's a tangible, stark representation of the ultimate impermanence. Historians still argue whether the actual daily practice of memento mori among common Stoic adherents was widespread, or if it remained more of a philosophical exercise for the elite. But for you, sitting here, absorbing these ideas, it's less about ancient statistics and more about a personal transformation. The tight grip you once had on everything loosens. The fear of loss diminishes because you've already acknowledged the inevitability of it. What if this acceptance of impermanence isn't a loss, but the ultimate gain? A gain of freedom, a gain of appreciation, a gain of profound peace. As the echoes of impermanence settle within you, a profound sense of tranquility begins to take root. You've let go of the frantic clinging to what can't be held, and in that release, you discover the bedrock of Stoic wisdom. Accepting what cannot be changed. This isn't a passive surrender, a shrug of resignation, but an active, conscious choice to align yourself with the flow of reality. It's like standing by a mighty river. You can fight the current, thrash against it, exhaust yourself, and still be swept away. Or you can understand its power, adapt, and find a way to move with it. You walk through the bustling Athenian marketplace and something catches your eye. A potter accidentally drops a newly fired vase. It shatters into 100 pieces, a delicate work of art reduced to dust and fragments. The potter cries out in frustration, perhaps even anger. But you, having absorbed the lessons of Zeno, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius, feel a different kind of observation. You remember your own sandcastle, dissolving back into the sea. The vase, beautiful as it was, existed only for a time, and now its form has changed. You can't unshatter it. You can't bring it back. To rage against its breakage would be to rage against the very laws of physics, the natural order of things. That's a battle you're guaranteed to lose, and it's a battle only fought in your mind, causing only self-inflicted anguish. This core principle, emphasized by all major Stoics, is about finding peace by acknowledging the immutable. There are things in this vast, indifferent universe that are simply beyond your control. The past, for instance, you cannot change a single moment of it, the actions of others. You can influence, you can persuade, but ultimately their choices are their own. The weather, the economy, the inevitability of illness and decay, these are not subjects for your personal petition. It's like demanding that a tree grow pineapples because you prefer them to apples. A silly demand, isn't it? Yet, how often do we make similar demands of reality? What if, instead of resisting, you chose to deeply accept? This isn't about giving up on striving for improvement or advocating for justice. Far from it. It's about knowing where your efforts truly lie. You can work tirelessly for a cause, give it your all, act virtuously and with integrity, as we'll explore later. But if the outcome isn't what you desired, despite your best efforts, you accept it. You don't beat yourself up. You don't descend into despair. You learn from it, adjust, and continue to act well. It's a continuous process of giving your best, then gracefully stepping back from the outcome. Think back to the small discomforts we discussed, the cold shower, the simple meal. By voluntarily facing these, you were already practicing acceptance on a micro level. You were accepting the temporary unpleasantness, knowing it would pass, and that your capacity to endure was greater than your preference for comfort. This is simply scaling that up. When life throws something truly challenging your way, a lost job, a health scare, a betrayal, the practice of acceptance becomes your anchor. Historians still argue whether Stoic acceptance could, at times, lead to political quietism rather than active engagement, but for the individual, its power to foster inner peace is undeniable. One quirky tidbit. Some ancient philosophical schools used to teach their students to visualize worst-case scenarios, not to dwell on them, but to mentally accept them, so that if they came to pass, they would not be caught off guard. It's a bit like rehearsing a difficult conversation in your head, not to make it happen, but to be prepared for it. It's the ultimate reality check, a profound act of mental discipline. And in that acceptance, paradoxically, you find immense strength. You are no longer tossed about by the whims of fate, but stand firm, a steady observer of life's unceasing drama. The wind howls, the waves crash, but you, rooted in acceptance, remain unshakable. With the tranquil acceptance of what cannot be changed now a part of your inner landscape, you're ready to confront perhaps the most formidable truth of all, death. This isn't about morbid fascination, but about embracing memento mori, the profound awareness of your own finitude. It's not a whisper of despair, but a vibrant shout to prioritize what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor we spoke of earlier, found immense strength in constantly reminding himself that life is brief, a mere flicker in the vastness of eternity. He wasn't unique. Awareness of life's brevity has been a cornerstone of wisdom across countless cultures. Imagine yourself attending a vibrant Athenian feast, the kind where wine flows freely, laughter echoes, and the air is thick with the scent of roasted meats and sweet pastries. Everyone is reveling, lost in the present moment's delights. but you, with your Stoic insights, carry a quiet understanding beneath the surface. You see not just the fleeting joy, but also the inevitable end of the feast, the cleanup, the dispersal of the guests. And eventually, the end of all feasts for all people. This awareness doesn't diminish your enjoyment, it sharpens it. It allows you to savor each bite, each laugh, each conversation with a heightened sense of appreciation. Because this too will pass. This contemplation of death isn't about becoming gloomy or depressed. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's a powerful tool for liberation. If you truly understand that your time is limited, then all the trivial worries, the petty grievances, the fear of what others think, they all begin to shrink in significance. Why waste precious moments on anger or envy when your very existence is a fleeting gift? It's like being on a spectacular vacation with a definite end date. You wouldn't spend that vacation arguing about the room service or obsessing over a minor travel delay, would you? You'd soak up every single moment because you know the clock is ticking. Think of it. If you truly accepted that today could be your last day, how would you live it differently? Would you still harbor that grudge? Would you procrastinate on that important conversation? Would you prioritize meaningless distractions over meaningful connections? Seneca, in his writings, often urged readers to live each day as if it were a complete life in itself, a perfect circle. This isn't about rushing into recklessness. It's about living with intentionality, clarity, and courage. What if confronting the reality of death is the ultimate antidote to procrastination and triviality? It puts everything into crystal clear perspective. A mainstream historical fact, the Roman practice of a triumphing general having a slave whisper memento mori, remember you must die, behind him during his grand parade. Even at the height of glory, this stark reminder ensured humility and groundedness. It was a potent antidote to hubris. Contrast that with modern society's relentless pursuit of immortality, whether through anti-aging creams or digital legacies. While technology may extend life, it cannot escape death. Historians still argue whether the slave's exact words were always memento mori or variations thereof, but the intent of humbling the victor was clear. One rather quirky or fringe tidbit related to this is the use of skull imagery in ancient and medieval art, not as symbols of horror, but as everyday reminders of mortality and a prompt for reflection. Imagine a small, intricately carved skull on your desk, not to frighten you, but to gently prod you into living more fully, loving more deeply, and acting more virtuously. It's a potent symbol of life's finite nature, urging you to make every moment count. You realize that your time is the most valuable currency you possess, and by contemplating its inevitable end, you unlock the secret to spending it wisely. With the understanding of your own mortality now firmly woven into the fabric of your perception, you gain an extraordinary clarity. This sharpened vision leads directly to the next crucial Stoic practice. Questioning judgments and perceptions. The bustling streets of Athens, once a blur of sensory input, now become a canvas for introspection. You realize that much of your suffering isn't caused by events themselves, but by the stories you tell yourself about those events. This was a crucial part of Epictetus's teachings, a man who, despite his humble beginnings as a slave, taught emperors the art of true freedom. Imagine a simple scenario. Someone bumps into you on the street, causing you to drop a scroll. Your immediate, automatic thought might be, how rude, they did that on purpose. What an inconsiderate oaf. Your heart races, a flush of anger spreads through you. But then you pause, you remember Epictetus's quiet insistence. It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. Was it truly intentional, or were they distracted in a hurry, perhaps lost in their own thoughts? You begin to untangle the event from your interpretation of it. The event was a bump and a dropped scroll. The judgment was rude or intentional. This is where the real work begins. You start to practice seeing reality more objectively, unshaped by the turbulent currents of your emotions. It's like putting on a pair of clear, unsmudged glasses after years of wearing spectacles covered in greasy fingerprints. Suddenly, the world looks much clearer. You realize that many of your emotional reactions, anger, frustration, envy, are not inherent to the situation, but are products of your own internal dialogue, your rapid-fire evaluations. What if that initial feeling of annoyance is just a habit, a well-worn groove in your mind, rather than an accurate reflection of reality? A mainstream historical fact. Epictetus, though unable to write, taught extensively on the distinction between what is up to us, our judgments, desires, aversions, and what is not up to us, everything else. This fundamental dichotomy, which we touched upon with Zeno's circle of control, is at the heart of questioning your judgments. You learn to catch yourself in the act of making an immediate, emotional assessment. Is that person truly annoying, or are they simply being in a way that you perceive as annoying because it clashes with your preferences? It's a subtle but profound difference. Consider a quirky or fringe tidbit. Some philosophical exercises involved deliberately misinterpreting a simple object to demonstrate how easily our minds can construct a false reality. For example, looking at a rope and convincing yourself it's a snake, then observing the fear that arises from this false judgment. The fear is real, but the snake is not. It highlights the power of perception. Historians still argue whether Epictetus's emphasis on the dichotomy of control was always perfectly understood by his students, or if some interpreted it too rigidly, leading to a kind of detachment rather than reasoned engagement. But for you, this isn't about rigid rules. It's about freedom. The moment you question a judgment, you create a space. In that space, you find the power to choose your response. You don't have to react automatically. You can choose calm over anger, understanding over condemnation. You realize that you hold the reins to your inner world, not external events. It's a continuous process of self-observation, a gentle interrogation of your own mind. And as you refine this skill, you discover that much of the world's perceived turmoil is merely a reflection of your own untamed perceptions. Having sharpened your perception by questioning judgments, you now discover a simple yet incredibly powerful antidote to the world's relentless demands: cultivating gratitude. It's not a grand philosophical treatise, but a quiet, daily practice that profound Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, encouraged to enhance contentment and happiness. In a world constantly pushing you to want more, to strive for the next big thing, gratitude is a radical act of rebellion. It's about finding profound joy in what you already possess, rather than fixating on what's missing. Imagine, if you will, waking up in a cramped, uncomfortable ancient Roman insula, a multi-story apartment building, where the sounds of your neighbors are constantly filtering through thin walls. Your breakfast is just a few olives and a piece of stale bread. By modern standards, it sounds rather grim, doesn't it? But a Stoic wouldn't focus on the lack of a spacious villa or a gourmet meal. Instead, they might quietly appreciate the warmth of the morning sun on their face, the fact that they have food at all, or the simple comfort of breath filling their lungs. It's about shifting your gaze, not to ignore hardship, but to illuminate the blessings that are always present, even amidst adversity. This practice isn't about ignoring genuine problems or pretending everything is perfect. That would be absurd, like trying to convince yourself a broken chariot wheel is a feature, not a flaw. No, it's about acknowledging the reality of your circumstances while simultaneously choosing to find the threads of good woven throughout them. If you're struggling with a difficult task, you might be grateful for the opportunity to learn and grow. If you're enduring a physical ailment, you might be grateful for the moments of respite or the resilience your body still possesses. What if the very act of looking for something to be grateful for actually changes your brain, making you more receptive to joy. A mainstream historical fact often overlooked in the dramatic tales of Roman emperors is Marcus Aurelius's daily practice of reflecting on blessings. In his meditations, he consistently expresses gratitude for his family, his teachers, his ability to reason, and even for the very act of existence. This wasn't just a pleasant thought, it was a fundamental part of his Stoic discipline, a way to anchor himself in peace amidst the immense pressures of leading an empire. It shows that even those with the most power found solace in this simple act. Consider a quirky or fringe tidbit. Some ancient philosophers would keep a gratitude journal long before the term was invented, meticulously listing the small, often overlooked gifts of each day, a friendly gesture, a beautiful sunset, a moment of quiet contemplation. It's a very practical application of the Stoic principle of focusing on what is within your control, your perspective. Historians still argue whether the formal practice of gratitude journaling was as widespread or structured among Stoics as it is today, but the underlying principle of valuing what you have was undeniably central to their philosophy. You might remember how we discussed Epictetus's teachings on questioning judgments. Gratitude takes that a step further. Instead of simply neutralizing a negative judgment, you actively replace it with a positive appreciation. It's not just about not seeing the snake in the rope, it's about appreciating the texture and strength of the rope itself. This daily cultivation slowly, subtly, transforms your outlook. The world doesn't change, but your experience of it does. You become less prone to discontent, less swayed by external circumstances, and more rooted in a profound sense of inner richness. With a heart now more attuned to gratitude, you begin to understand the true north of Stoic living, acting virtuously for its own sake. This isn't about accumulating good deeds for a heavenly reward, or for social praise, or even to avoid punishment. No, it's about prioritizing integrity, honesty, courage, justice, and wisdom in your every behavior, simply because these are the only things truly good in themselves. This foundational principle, laid down by Zeno of Citium and echoed by all who followed, argues that virtue is the sole good and everything else, health, wealth, pleasure, is merely indifferent, neither good nor bad. Imagine walking through the bustling Athenian marketplace, where the scent of baking bread mixes with the chatter of vendors. You see a merchant shortchanging a customer, subtly slipping a lighter coin into their hand. Your immediate instinct might be to ignore it, to mind your own business. But a Stoic, guided by the virtue of justice, would feel a quiet imperative to act, not out of anger or a desire to be seen as a hero, but because fairness is inherently good, and to allow injustice to pass unchallenged is to compromise your own integrity. It's like a carpenter building a chair. They don't build it well because someone is watching, or because they'll get paid more for a sturdy chair. They build it well because it is the nature of a good carpenter to build well. This commitment to virtue is unwavering, regardless of external circumstances or personal feelings. You might feel tired, you might face ridicule, you might even suffer consequences for acting justly. But your choice to act virtuously is independent of these outcomes. It's a bit like choosing to tell the truth, even when a lie would be more convenient. The act of telling the truth is virtuous, regardless of whether it saves you trouble or lands you in it. It's a commitment to an internal moral compass that points true north, always. What if, by consistently choosing the virtuous path, you become a living embodiment of the good, rather than just a seeker of it? A mainstream historical fact reinforcing this is the Stoic emphasis on the four cardinal virtues: wisdom, the knowledge of what is good, bad, and indifferent; justice, fairness, and benevolence; courage, facing fear and difficulty with rationality; and temperance, self-control and moderation. These weren't abstract concepts to them. They were practical guides for daily living, a framework for every decision. The entire Stoic ethical system flows from these four pillars, much like a well-built temple relies on its sturdy columns. Consider a quirky or fringe tidbit. Some Stoic exercises involved role-playing ethical dilemmas to train their students to make virtuous choices under pressure, almost like a philosophical fire drill. Imagine debating with a friend whether to betray a secret for personal gain, arguing both sides with detached rationality, not to actually do it, but to fortify your resolve for when a real temptation arises. Historians still argue whether the Stoics' rigorous adherence to virtue, especially in the face of tyranny, was always practical, or if it sometimes led to martyrdom that could have been avoided. But the ideal for them was paramount. You might recall our discussion about the circle of control. Here, the focus shifts entirely to what is absolutely within your control, your own character. You cannot control what others do or the outcomes of your actions, but you can always control whether you act with integrity, honesty, and wisdom. This is the ultimate freedom, the unshakable foundation of a well-lived life. It's a constant, internal striving for excellence, not for external validation, but for the inherent satisfaction of being a good person, simply because that's the best thing to be. Having embraced virtue as its own reward, you now arrive at a crucial junction in Stoic wisdom. Do your best, then accept the outcome. This isn't a contradiction to acting virtuously, but its practical complement. It's the understanding that while your effort and intention are entirely within your control, the results often are not. This principle, a blend of the practical insights of Seneca and the clear distinctions taught by Epictetus, liberates you from the anxiety of unfulfilled expectations and the despair of perceived failure. Imagine yourself as an ancient Roman athlete training diligently for the Olympic Games. You rise before dawn, meticulously follow your diet, push your body to its limits, and perfect your technique. You do everything humanly possible to prepare. When the day of the race arrives, you compete with every fiber of your being. You run with all your might, fueled by your discipline and dedication. But when you cross the finish line, someone else is ahead of you. You didn't win gold. A non-Stoic might be devastated, consumed by self-blame or envy. But a Stoic, having internalized this principle, would understand. You did your best, you executed your training with integrity and ran the race with courage. The outcome, whether you won, lost, or came in third, was beyond your ultimate control. The wind resistance, the condition of the track, the inherent talent of your competitors, even a momentary cramp, these factors exist outside your circle of influence. Your virtue lay in the effort, not in the medal. What if this acceptance isn't a sign of weakness, but the ultimate expression of inner strength? It allows you to move on, to learn, and to strive again without the crushing weight of attachment to a specific result. This is a mainstream historical fact. Stoics consistently drew a sharp distinction between actions and outcomes. They believed you should apply yourself fully to your tasks, dedicating your reason and virtue to them. But once the action is complete, you release your attachment to the specific result. It's like planting a seed. You choose the best seed, prepare the soil diligently, water it appropriately, and provide sunlight. You do your best. But whether it flourishes into a mighty oak or succumbs to a pest is not entirely up to you. You accept what nature dictates, learning from the process. Consider a quirky or fringe tidbit. Some Stoic teachers would occasionally set tasks for their students that were designed to fail, or to produce an unpredictable outcome, specifically to train them in this detachment from results. Imagine being told to spend hours meticulously carving a piece of wood, only for the teacher to deliberately break it upon completion. The point wasn't the finished carving, it was the student's reaction to its destruction. Did they lament the lost effort, or did they accept it as part of the lesson, focusing on the discipline and skill they acquired? Historians still argue whether such practices were widely adopted or confined to specific, more rigorous philosophical schools, but their intent was clearly to cultivate this crucial mindset. You might remember how we discussed the notion of amor fati, loving your fate. This principle ties directly into that. It's not just accepting what happens, but embracing it, even when it's not what you desired. You did your best, and whatever the universe delivered, you accept it as the next unfolding of reality. This allows you to experience the process of striving without the emotional roller coaster of attachment. You become less susceptible to external praise or criticism because your worth isn't tied to what you achieve, but to how you strive. With your focus now firmly on the effort rather than the outcome, you are ready for the final, overarching principle that guides all Stoic wisdom. Make choices based on reason, not emotion. This is the bedrock, the very foundation of Stoic ethics, originating with Zeno of Citium and relentlessly championed by every Stoic who followed. It's about seeking harmony with nature, not the nature of trees and rivers alone, but the fundamental rational order of the cosmos, and using that reason to guide every single decision you make. Imagine a turbulent sea churned by a sudden storm. Your small boat is tossed about, your emotions, fear, panic, frustration, are screaming at you to do anything to escape the chaos. You might be tempted to abandon the tiller, to just let the waves carry you wherever they may. But the Stoic, in this scenario, would grip the tiller tighter. They would consult their internal compass of reason, analyze the wind, the currents, the strength of their vessel, and make a decision based on logical assessment, not on the visceral pull of their feelings. It's like being a skilled general in the midst of battle. Emotions are rampant, but the general must make strategic decisions based on clear, rational thought, not on the fear of defeat or the exhilaration of a small victory. This isn't about suppressing emotions entirely. That's a common misconception, a philosophical joke about Stoics being emotionless robots. Far from it. Stoics felt emotions deeply, but they trained themselves not to be ruled by them. They understood that emotions, left unchecked, can cloud judgment, lead to irrational choices, and ultimately cause suffering. Reason, on the other hand, is your internal guide to what is truly good, what aligns with virtue, and what is ultimately beneficial for your flourishing as a human being. What if your greatest strength isn't in what you feel, but in what you choose to do despite what you feel? A mainstream historical fact. The Stoics believed that the universe itself is ordered by a divine reason, or logos, and that human beings uniquely possess a spark of this same reason. Their goal was to live in accordance with nature, which meant living in accordance with reason. This isn't about retreating to a cave and pondering the cosmos. It's about applying rational thought to every interaction, every challenge, every desire. When faced with a difficult decision, they would ask, what is the rational, virtuous choice here? Not what feels good or what will make me popular. Consider a quirky or fringe tidbit. Some Stoic exercises involved systematically dissecting a problem, breaking it down into its smallest, most objective components to remove the emotional charge from it. It's almost like a cognitive behavioral therapy session from antiquity, where you'd verbally argue against your own irrational thoughts. Imagine sitting in a quiet room, mentally stripping away all your desires and fears about a situation, until only the bare, objective facts remained. Historians still argue whether the Stoics' concept of apatheia, freedom from disturbing passions, meant a total absence of emotion or merely freedom from irrational or unhealthy emotions. But for you, the message is clear. Every choice you make, from the smallest daily habit to the most significant life decision, is an opportunity to exercise your reason. You recall Epictetus teaching you to question your judgments, and Seneca showing you the strength in voluntary discomfort. Now you synthesize these lessons. You analyze situations calmly, You consider the long-term consequences, and you choose the path that aligns with your highest values, not the path dictated by fleeting desires or reactive anger. This commitment to reason is the capstone of your Stoic journey, the master key to unlocking a life of tranquility and purpose. The ancient lamp flickers, casting long, dancing shadows across the quiet room. The echoes of philosophical debates, the distant clamor of marketplaces, the quiet rustle of parchment, they all begin to recede, fading like a gentle dream. You've journeyed through the quiet wisdom of the Stoics, exploring the terrain of your own inner world. The grand concepts of control, impermanence, acceptance, and reason now feel less like abstract theories and more like familiar friends, gentle whispers guiding you towards a profound peace. Feel your body relax, the last vestiges of the day's tensions melting away. There's no urgent task, no pressing worry, just the serene embrace of the present moment. The chaos outside, the incessant demands, the fleeting anxieties, they all seem a little more distant now, a little less powerful. You carry within you the quiet strength of those who understood that true freedom isn't found in controlling the external world, but in mastering the only domain truly yours. Your mind, your reactions, your choices. Let the wisdom sink deep, a quiet comfort for the night. Rest now, knowing that the seeds of tranquility have been planted, ready to grow silently within you.